So in recent Warhammer updates coming down the pipeline, kind of like Batman, but with a jetpack, is none other than Aethon Shaan, this big boss of the Raven Guard, right? He's rocking the Blackwing mantle and the claws of Severax, basically looking like if Predator raided Batman's wardrobe. We're going with the Batman thing, right? But there is more, because the Raven Guard aren't just turning up solo, so they've got a combat patrol box, which you know I advocate for all of the time. It's basically like the Avengers assembling in bird-themed black armour. The Shadowclaw Severax comes packing. You've got a jump pack captain. The bloke basically clearly didn't read the no flying indoors sign. 5 jump pack intercessors for the squad goals, 10 infiltrators sneaking in like a solid snake on a Friday night, and the Invicta tactical war suit, which is basically a mech suit for when you want to cosplay Iron Man, but with way more guns. So, Raven Guard. Let's go. These guys were like the 19th Legion back in the day. Proper old school space marines. The big boy in charge is Corvus Corax, and they hang out in Deliverance. It's basically a moon spinning around the hive world. I think like Star Wars, but everyone's miserable and covered in soot. Now, when the Horus heresy kicked off, the Raven Guard got absolutely battered. Like your local Sunday league team trying to take on Real Madrid. They only survived by pulling off some desperate last-minute heroics that would make even like MacGyver raise an eyebrow. Now, what they're really known for, though, is sneaky business. Now, these guys, they specialise in guerrilla warfare, slipping behind enemy lines, creeping about like Metal Gear Solid snakes, and then kind of like smashing in with surgical precision. Basically the SAS of the 41st millennium, only with bigger claws and cooler armour. So if we take it right back, the Raven Guard, they started off, like I said, 19th Legion, the Emperor's secret hit squad back in the Unification Wars on Terra. Think of them as his like Black Ops kind of guys, sneaking about, doing dirty jobs, and generally just SAS of the future. Now the first recruits, they're tough as nails blokes from the Asiatic dust fields. Proper savage, but still had the tech know-how. Imagine Mad Max Road Warriors, but with a side hustle in engineering. They spent their early days creeping around, spying, and then smashing anyone who was like, nah, we're not joining your Imperium, thanks. Basically the Night Lords, but without the full-on Batman villain cosplay. They even went toe-to-toe with Callaghan of Ursh, some like warlord on Terra, and then they later helped clear out alien squatters on Jupiter's moon. And that one was like a bloodbath, though. So much so that the survivors wore Jovian runes after, like soldiers getting a regimental tattoo down the boozer. I'm not funny. During the Great Crusade, they were kind of like stuck in Horus's shadow, I guess. The Lunar Wolves got to be the rock stars, while the 19th lads were kind of like the roadies, making sure the amps were plugged in. Horus liked them. They were basically kind of like backup dancers, though, to his big show. And then along comes their Primarch, Corvus Corax. So when the Emperor finally finds him on Deliverance, Corax had kind of just kicked out the local forge guilds using actual nukes, big like don't mess with me energy. He has a long chinwag with big E. No one knows what was said, though, which I think is kind of cool. And by dawn, he agrees to take over the Legion, but only if Kyavar gets properly bought into the Imperium. Now, by the time he's in charge, the Crusade's been going on for a century, right? But Corvax slaps his stamp on the Legion fast. Out go the old Terran commanders, booted like a bad manager after relegation, and then in comes stealth and speed, his Deliverance playbook. He gets like new kit made, like a Shadowhawk, a sneaky Thunderhawk, like a Whisper Cutter, which is basically like Uber, but stealth edition. So yeah, the Raven Guard, they kind of went from the Emperor's undercover bouncers to being Horus's sidekicks, and then finally getting their broody Primarch who said, nah lads, we're going to do this the right way, and we're going to do it my way. So before Corax showed up, the Raven Guard, they were basically doing a budget Night Lord's impression. So all about terror tactics, sulking about in the dark, making people soil themselves before shooting them. But when Corax finally got discovered, he took one look at that nonsense and he was like, no, it's not how we're doing things around here anymore, boys. I'm going to help us out. Under his watch, the Raven Guard went pro. They became the go-to sabotage, the assassination specialists, the Black Ops boys of the Imperium. Worlds everyone said were untouchable, they fell quicker than a middle-aged bloke after 3 pints and a dodgy kebab. Corax had them striking exactly where it hurt, like tactical ninjas with jetpacks. Even Horus, Mr. I'm the War Master, look at me, kept calling them up whenever he needed a guaranteed win. Thing is, Corax, he didn't like Horus, couldn't stand him. Proper mutual dislike. There's even rumours that they nearly came to blows once, which I would have paid good money to see. Like, Why that ever happened, I don't know. The real bust-up, though, came at the Battle of Gate 42. Horus ordered the Raven Guard into like a meat grinder frontal assault, something Corax flat out said was, well, just stupid. Surprise, surprise, it went exactly how Corax predicted. The Legion got mauled. They dropped to about 80,000 Astartes, which is like a massive ouch, even by Space Marine standards. Now, after that, Corax told Horus to get lost, basically, jog on, mate, swearing he'd never fight under him again. And just to make sure his Legion stayed pure in his eyes, he quietly started shoving all the Terran-born veterans off to forgotten corners of the galaxy on totally important crusades, basically sending the old guard off to like football in the Sunday League while his Deliverance boys played in the Champions League. We're with the football thing today, right? So the Raven Guard were like never like the biggest lads on the pitch during the Great Crusade. Like I said, 80,000 Astartes and their mates in the like Therion cohort tagging along. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in like style. That, like I said earlier, the sneaky guerrilla warfare, sabotage, blink and you'll miss it, ambushes. Basically, if you heard a noise behind you, too late. They're here, right? Then came like this absolute shambles, right? Which was Istvaan V. So 7 legions rocked up. Iron Hands, Salamanders, Alpha Legion, Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and our Raven Guard, thinking they were going to put Horus and his traitor mates back in their box. But no, Horus, Fulgrim, Angron, Mortarion, they were just sitting there like Bond villains, like waiting for the trap to spring. The Raven Guard, they piled in. They got stuck into some brutal close quarters fighting, completely out of their element, mind you, but they still held their own. And then the traitors suddenly retreated into their forts. The loyalists went, "Oi, free breather, lads," and boom, betrayal central. It turns out the Iron Warriors, the Night Lords, the Alpha Legion, and the Word Bearers were snakes in the grass. Loyalist guns turned on the Raven Guard, and in minutes, hundreds were just mulch. Out of 80,000, they got whittled down to 3,000 grizzled survivors. It was grim, like absolutely grim. Corax is now in full broody vengeance mode. Even swapped out his talons, which like he lost in a scrap with Lorgar, saved only because like Conrad like stuck his claws in for a big whip, right? So he's now whipping his way, right? It's like a hardcore midlife crisis vibes. A lucky rescue by a battle barge Avenger under Commander Bran Nev saved what was left, including battered Therion cohort lads. Now, after narrowly dodging Angron and the World Eaters, like cheers to some dodgy Alpha Legion, like meddling, Corax legged it back to Terra. He had a right Barney with Rogel, Dawn and Malcador until the Emperor himself basically shouted, "Shut the up," right? In psychic surround sound, and showed him the secret recipe for making Primarchs. Proper like Colonel Sanders reveals the herbs and spices moment. Armed with gene-forging tech, Corax then whipped up a new breed, the Raptors. They're faster, they're stronger, they're smarter, they're Astartes 2.0. They smashed their debut gig, absolutely dunking on veteran word bearers. Now, but of course, the Alpha Legion, they stuck their greasy hands in, spiked the gene tech with demon blood, and boom, mutant like nightmare fuel. Raven Guard Labs turned into like something out of the thing. Still, Corax rallied. About 4,000 Astartes, plus the Therion cohort, some Custodes, and even a sprinkle of like Imperial fists wrecked the perfect fortress of the Emperor's children. Small losses for the Raven Guard, total annihilation for the traitors. Later, they pulled off the Battle of Yarant, even bailing out the Space Wolves, which is not bad for a legion that had literally been chopped to ribbons. Then, Lionel Johnson rocks up. All smug, Dark Angel swagger, like Conor McGregor walk, right? Offering Corax a spot in his crusade of vengeance. The Wolves jumped in head first, but Corax, still Mr. like broody Batman, was like, "Cheers, mate, but I'm going to send a smaller squad to do sneaky ops instead." It's like a classic Raven Guard move. The thing is, after losing the gene tech, the Legion, they stayed small, but small didn't mean weak. They stuck to their cells, sabotage and covert ops, fighting smarter, not harder. Some survivors even linked up with battered salamanders and iron hands running around the galaxy, handing out vengeance like angry Deliveroo drivers. So yeah, the Raven Guard from 80,000 to 3,000, mutant fiascos, whips instead of claws and a Gene Lab horror story, but somehow, through sheer stubbornness and just sneaky brilliance, I guess, they're still in the game, fighting from the shadows and making Horus regret ever sending them to Istvaan. So then along comes Rabute Guilliman. Mr. I've got a spreadsheet for that. That sums him up, right? And he drops the Codex Astartes, basically the Warhammer version of HR guidelines. No more big legions. Everyone's split into a neat little 1,000-man chapters. Now, Corax wasn't exactly thrilled by this. He had no choice but to play ball, so he chopped up what was left of his battered legion into smaller squads, while still keeping the Raven Guard flavour of that sneak, stab, vanish. So out of the 3,000 survivors of the Istvaan disaster, the Raven Guard chapter was born in the second founding. A smaller numbers, sure, but still dangerous as hell. They've been skulking about ever since, pulling off sneaky wins and then making other chapters look like they're just smashing action figures together. They've bagged scalps, right? Like Corax Voldorius, with a little help from the White Scars. Basically, if there's a shadow war to be fought, the Raven Guard are already there, halfway through the job, and you probably didn't even notice. If we talk about their gene seed, the Raven Guard gene seed is probably about as reliable as getting a really dodgy second-hand car off eBay. A bunch of their fancy organs either just don't grow at all or gave up the ghost ages ago. They're missing the mucranoid, which is no acid spit party trick, and the Betcher's gland, which is no toxic spittle either, which was unlucky. Their melanchromic organ mutated too, which essentially means that every Raven Guard ends up looking like they've been locked in a cellar for a decade. Their skin turns like this ghost white, while their hair and their eyes go like proper black. Think Marilyn Manson meets Nosferatu, but with power armor and a little bit more morals. Why? It could be down to Corax's dodgy gene seed experiments back in the day when he was trying to brew up super Astartes, or it could be the Alpha Legion's sneaky sabotage. So either way, nobody's put their finger on it yet. It's quite a nice up in the air theory. Things then start to get worse, right? If you fast forward a little bit, their gene seed, it started breaking down even more at some points. Implants rejecting left, right and centre. Recruitment kind of slowed, but the chapter didn't stop scrapping. It just meant fewer spooky goth lads to go around. Now this one is properly crazy. Some Raven Guard, they get hit with a brain melter called the Sable Brand. Now this makes them go cold-blooded in battle. No fear, no self-preservation, just murder but on repeat. And they start hearing voices, confusing the whispers of the dead with the living. The cherry on top is their eyes go full-on black pits. Straight up horror movie vibes, like Geralt when he's in full dark vision mode. Corax himself probably had it. It explains a lot, doesn't it? But back in the Great Crusade, he bundled the afflicted into special squads called the Shadow Killers. But after Istvaan V cut the Legion down to scraps, he couldn't afford to just shove the unhinged ones into their own battalion anymore. Later, Corax, he tried to rein it in with his trifold Path of Shadow, which is basically the Raven Guard's meditation therapy, but with more lives. It cut down on outbreaks, but if a brother went too far gone and didn't get himself killed in battle, well, off to the Raven Spire dungeon for secret apothecary experiments. It's a nice bit of shh, don't tell terror. That's gonna work, right? It's gonna work. So if we go way back to the beginning when we talked about the new miniature Aethon Shaan, current chapter master, an all-round broody boss man. So before running the whole show, he was the shadow captain of the first company, basically the Raven Guard equivalent of leading the SAS. And before that, he cut his teeth as a fourth company captain. So yeah, he's done his rounds, he's worked his way up the ladder, and now he is the one with the big chair in the Raven Spire. Think of him as the bloke who started out pulling pints, then managed the bar, and now he suddenly owns the whole pub. Only this pub's full of pale-skinned super soldiers with jetpacks. So yeah, basically from being the Emperor's sneaky hit squad to getting absolutely rinsed on Istvaan to brooding their way through gene-scene disasters and then mutant fiascos, they've somehow kept flapping those black wings in the dark. They're not the flashiest, they're not the loudest, but if you suddenly feel like a cold chill, you'll realise your HQ just went up in smoke, then yeah, it was definitely them. And at the helm now, Aethon Shaan, strutting about in the black wing mantle, swinging the claws of Severax and then carrying on Corax's legacy of fight smarter, fight nastier, and vanish before anyone clocks what happened. Basically, Batman, Wolverine and Predator all rolled into one pale, moody bloke with zero patience for chaos and nonsense. So I guess whether you love him for the stealth, the style, or straight-up stubbornness to keep going when the galaxy keeps kicking them in the teeth, the Raven Guard proved one thing, and that's in the grimdark of the far future, It pays to fight dirty. I'm only going to employ you one time to please do all those things you need to do to support my tiny channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.